Ukraine now it has told residents to evacuate the city of Perov in the Donetsk region, with officials saying Russian forces are rapidly approaching after heavy fighting. There it comes, as the Ukrainian incursion into Russia continues. An aide to the Kremlin has claimed that NATO and the West were directly involved in the planning for Ukraine's attack on Russia's KK region. News agency Reuters reports comments in the Izvestia newspaper from Nikolai Patrushev saying statements that they were not involved were not true. The White House meanwhile says Ukraine did not provide advance notice of its incursion and that Washington had no involvement. Ukraine has set up a military office inside Russia which it says will meet the immediate needs of the population in the area. Russian officials previously said they have prepared plans for additional measures to safeguard the population and infrastructure in area is bordering Ukraine. Well, let's speak now to Michael Bosu, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council Eurasia Center. Joins us from Palermo. And Michael, good to have you with us on the program. Thank you very much for your time. And first of all, what's the latest you're hearing about the state of play with this incursion and the Russian response to it? Sure, good to be with you, Anita. Well, it's very, very interesting, fascinating. In fact, there is now discussion within the Atlantic Council that the slow Russian response may indicate hints of insubordination at this point, because it's very difficult to explain this almost completely impotent response to the Ukrainian invasion. Under the first of all, the Ukrainian troops blasted by were supposed to be highly effective barriers, and secondly, you're not seeing much of a kind of resistance among the general population. Among law enforcement, there hasn't been one shot reported fired from any police station, and also on, I think, the slow-mo kind of reaction of the security forces, if that is indeed the case, may indicate that the generals, the FSB, are telling Putin enough is enough. I don't want to take this theory too far, but it seems as we go day by day, it seems to be making a lot more sense. And just quickly, and to the other thing is, it's very interesting who Mr. Putin put in charge of the operation to push back the Ukrainians. LD, his former head of security, but he's also the fellow who was in charge of the evacuation of Viktor Yanukovych and also the annexation of Crimea, so he's got quite the rap sheet behind him. As you say, that is just a theory. I mean, could this idea be explained instead by reports that actually a lot of the Russian troops there are very inexperienced conscripts? Well, that too, that is a factor, and we also have to try and look ahead and see what Mr. Putin would do, who is in very, very desperate shape. He's very, very angry, and he may actually have to have another campaign to conscript to get more fighters, and this is going to be another problem for him, because it's very politically sensitive. But also I think a lot of Russians realize now that going to the front line, whether it's within Russia near Say's territory on the Ukrainian front line, that it's either a death sentence or you're going to come back very badly injured. So it's a multiple set of problems, I think, building up for him. The reports of Kremlin aides saying that the West was involved in planning this, perhaps not surprising. At the White House, as we said in the introduction, denying that it was involved and that had any notice of what was going to happen. But this points to us, doesn't it, the risk that might come from this incursion by Ukraine, which of course Western allies are watching very closely. Sure, I mean, it feeds very, very nicely into the typical Russian propaganda narrative that it's Russia versus the West. But I think from the Ukrainian point of view, there's the saying, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. I think that's what Ukraine did in this particular case, is they went in with some Western kit, not all of it, but with some of it, and did what they have to do. And I think what we saw afterwards was what has been happening since the start of the war. Drip by drip or step by step, Western Ireland have been coming on board, whether it's provision of F-16s or others. And you might have seen as well that the UK has said okay for you to use our kit inside Russia. Yeah, do you think, Michael, sorry to interrupt, do you think these allies are also those saying to Ukraine, how far exactly are you trying to go with this? I think the red line, Anita, will be when if they bring in more sophisticated kit, I mean, stuff that is actually captured by the Russians, and then the Russians are allowed to do their reverse engineering. That could be a red line for the West. So I think the Ukrainians are being wisely very selective in terms of what they're deploying. Michael Bosu, good to get your thoughts on that. Thanks for watching. For more updates, like, share, subscribe and press bell icon.